morning, everybody, and thanks for being with the Center for Food Integrity as we connect the dots with Dr. Food. Here in September, with Labor Day in the rearview mirror, it's unbelievable that the summer is over. So we'll hold on to every last minute of warm weather we can get. I am Mickey French. I am the Executive Director of the Center for Food Integrity. CFI, as you know, is a member-based organization focused on building trust in food across the food system, between the food system and consumers, and in and amongst the food system. This is an example of some of the content that we create in order to give us a view of what's happening outside of the US and across the world. So that brings us to my co-host. I wouldn't even say guest. I think we're co-hosts because we don't ever have any other guests but you, David. David is one of our experts on our Trust Insights Council. He's based in Wales and has lived all over the world, as I have, and has decades of experience in the food and drink industry. So August was holiday month in Europe. We're all very jealous of that. And September, I think you're back to traveling again. So welcome, David. And where are you headed next?
Right, yes. I've sort of had August off, to be honest, but September, October look busy. Next week it's Ireland with the dairy industry. Looking forward to that. And then zipping back to England, I'm with the meat industry up north, and then horticulture, fruit and vegetables in Holland. Then I'm heading for Thailand, which will be pork, and off to Australia. And there I'm working with a major retailer and with various meat companies. So yeah, a busy time. I'm back in the middle of October.
Fantastic. Now our viewers can see why we talk to you, because you've got it all covered as we do. So we're happy to be live this morning. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll save a few minutes at the end to get to your questions. So our topics today range from packaging to some of the dynamics and macro trends in global export dynamics and what consumers are saying. So let's jump right in. Our first topic relates to a wide sweeping new set of regulations announced by the UK's equivalent of the USDA around food packaging. David, tell us what's happening over there.
Right, we always seem to be regulating in my side of the world, but hopefully it's for good reason. I think this is actually, so it's DEFRA, which is our Department of Ag, Food and the Environment, and they've just announced details of something which is called, it sounds a bit dull, but it's called an Extended Producer Responsibility for Packaging Program. And it impacts all those who are involved in food packaging, whether you make the packaging or whether you use the packaging. And it's looking at the costs associated with the life cycle of the packaging itself, from its manufacture all the way through to when consumers recycle it or try to recycle it. So how does it work? Well, if a food manufacturer brings in a new food product, then he or she has to estimate how much packaging will be associated in terms of volume, weight, and that's for any product. And they've got to assess what type of packaging it is, and then the user, the food manufacturer who's using the packaging, will be charged a fee per ton to cover the cost of packaging moving through the life cycle, as I mentioned, until it's actually recycled. And so this is about the circular economy associated with packaging, and it's being introduced really to try and, first of all, to get those who make packaging to start with the idea that we need packaging which can be recycled and isn't with us for hundreds of years. And there's fees associated with each different sorts of packaging. So, for example, plastic packaging will get charged $650 per ton. Aluminum, as you would say, aluminium, as I'd say, gets charged $500 per ton. Fiber-based composite packaging, the sort of thing that it's a plastic and paper, that comes in at $700 per ton. Paper's cheaper, it's $350 per ton, and glass is less at $200 a ton. And actually, if you're in plastic packaging in the UK, then it's a double whammy, because you're also charged extra for packaging that is less than 30% recycled content, and that brings another $200 a ton. So if I give you an example, let's take a Coke can. I mean, my estimate, it comes out at about a half-cent tax to Coke, which is a tiny little number, if you will. But remember, they produce billions of cans. And the industry is actually, believe it or not, it's favorable about this. It's saying we can support this tax as long as the government spends the tax on recycling support and facilities and don't just sort of squirrel the money away into some dark dungeon. Of course, consumers will pay in the end in terms of the tax, but the government wants us to do the right thing, and so does the industry, to be honest. And it applies to all. So expect to see the market, the food market, with its packaging move with the environment in the front of its mind.
That's really interesting because a lot to sort of defer that cost of recycling back to, well, ultimately to the consumers, but in a lot of markets here in our smaller markets in our massive country, there is no recycling, or you have to pay to have your recycling picked up. So it really depends on where you are in the country. So interesting incentive. Our next topic dives into some of the macro trends which we should be watching, which might seemingly have nothing to do with food, but what do bans on electric vehicles have to do with food, David?
Right. Okay. Well, you might recall, I mean, back a couple of years ago, actually, we talked in 2021 about China, who suddenly increased tariffs, like double, trebled them on Australian food and drink goods, like their barley, wine, seafood, etc. And that was in response to the Australian Prime Minister, as was then, calling for an international inquiry on COVID as it came from Wuhan. And China said, we don't like that, so we're going to penalize you. Well, okay, back to your electric vehicle mention, that you announced a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles very recently. And what's more, the European Union has put tariffs in place too. Not quite your level, it's not 100%, but it's close to it. Well, so what? Well, actually, China launched an anti-subsidy investigation into dairy imports from the EU into China the day after the EU announced that revised tariff plan for China-made electric vehicles. So again, it was China saying, we don't like what you're doing. We're going to get our own back, the tit for tat, if you will. It's I mean, no surprise, of course, EU dairy exports to China are huge. And actually, I mentioned I'm going to Ireland next week. Well, it's especially tough on the Irish, who are huge exporters. The dairy is the biggest export out of Ireland, dairy products, and their major market is China. But for the poor Irish dairy producers, they've got this double whammy because they'll be hurt if China puts high tariffs on dairy imports from the EU. At the same time, the Irish government are now putting in place taxing cows to reduce emissions. So it's the double whammy, if you will. But more generally, I can just see more disturbance in international trade markets, and it puts me in mind, not that I was around, but a return to the 1930s style protectionism across the globe. That wasn't good for economies. We knew that. Let's not do it again.
Yeah, and not good for consumers either. So it's really important for us to take a look at those overall macro trends and political relationships, I'll say. So our third topic today is one that's familiar to those working in the consumer space and something that we're tackling all of the time, and we have coming up at our summit, is how consumers say one thing and then act differently. So what research do we look at to see really what they are doing and how they're acting? So what's the latest survey from the UK saying about consumer behavior as it relates to meat?
Right, meat and dairy. Actually, it's an interesting new survey from a composite organization which is called Eating Better. These are 60 organizations which are well reputed and respected in the UK, and that they're not anti-meat or anti-dairy, but they're looking to see how the UK can improve its diet to improve the health of the nation and the planet. And their survey shows that close to half, 45% actually, of respondents believe in the UK think dairy and meat do have a negative impact on the environment. And what's more, that sentiment is growing more negative over the from year to year. Yet, notwithstanding that, 2/3 of those surveys are still eating meat on a daily basis. They might eat it in smaller amounts, but I don't think personally that means that they're cutting back. It just means they're getting, well, they are cutting back. They're cutting back because they're getting older. We're an aging economy. The fact of the matter is we like meat. We're saying around the world, environmental groups are saying, let's reduce our meat consumption, our dairy consumption. People in general say yes, but if we like something, it's very difficult to make a switch. I mean, as an aside, I saw a cartoon on the internet the other day, and I really liked it. It was funny. It was a picture of a cavemen hunting deer. And underneath it, it said, we've never found a cave painting celebrating salads. I mean, the fact of the matter is, eating meat is in our DNA, and it's very difficult to shift us. So, notwithstanding our love of meat across Europe, the food industry is, this intrigues me, that the food industry is trying to move us, to nudge us in the right direction as they see it, more towards plant-based. And so, for example, Lidl, one of those great big hard discounters in the Netherlands, is making plant-based products equal to or cheaper than animal-based products. So to try and encourage consumers to adopt more sustainable diets as they see it. And what's more, they were the first supermarket to launch hybrid ground meat, which essentially is 60% ground beef and 40% pea protein. It's a good product to start with, ground meat, actually, because half of the Dutch, probably like the US, eat ground beef every week. So it's a good product to make inroads. And what's more, Lidl have announced plans to double their sales by 2030 of plant-based products to make them more accessible and affordable. And actually, why I mention it, because you wouldn't expect that from a hard discount grocer retailer.
Right.
Yeah, but they're bound and determined to make a statement about the environment, and, good on them in that regard.
Yeah. We see a lot coming up here on the plant-based and plant-based whole food, and I think that hybrid ground meat is a really interesting thing to watch. So, but you're right. It's, coming off of the Labor Day holiday, we were not putting plants on the grill. We were putting lots of meat on the grill. So I don't see any questions in the chat. David, any final tidbits for this month?
Right. Well, I've got two. And I'm going to put the Welsh on the podium. I'm Welsh. I was born in Wales. It's in a modest moment, my mother told me I was conceived in Wales, but that's by the by. And Wales is tiny by US standards. It's smaller than New Jersey, and New Jersey is your 47th smallest state, for goodness sake. Yet we are in bronze medal position, so we're third in the world with regard to household recycling, only beaten by Germany and Taiwan. And we've got in Wales, we've got a 70% recycle rate at the household level. And what's more, the vast majority of Welsh see household recycling as a really positive social norm. And I make the point, I can say this because I'm Welsh, we're not a high income part of the UK. Essentially we're working class folk, but we believe that it's our responsibility. Somebody has to grab and in the valleys in Wales, that's where the mines used to be. It's deeply working class there. It's far from high income. You can go down any street and see there are 5 bags per household on the curb on recycling day. There's a bag for plastics and cans, one for paper, one for glass, one for food waste, and one for general waste. And what it shows me is you can build a recycling culture over time if you bring people with you, and they've certainly done that in Wales. So that's number one. Tip number one. Tip number two intrigues me too. It's about smoking. I've mentioned that before, that smoking regulation is a big political deal in the UK. And last week, it really hit the headlines. It even pushed you guys off So there was less coverage of the upcoming presidential campaigns. But you might remember that the Conservative government, the one we've just dumped out in the UK, they passed legislation outlawing the sale of tobacco for anybody born after 2009. So if you're 15 years old or less in the UK, you'll never, ever be legally able to buy tobacco. The new Labour government's in, and they endorsed this legislation. They said, let's push ahead and go further. And they want to ban smoking in pubs, smoking in public gardens, outside hospitals, outside sports ground, and the like. But there's been a huge pushback from pub owners who are finding it difficult in current economic conditions to keep their trade. And they're saying, look, more people are drinking at home. If you don't allow them to have a cigarette when they're at the pub, then they're going to ditch us. So that might be a nail in their coffin, so they say. But many of those pub smokers are Labour Party supporters. That's the party that's now in office. It'll be interesting to see if the government can actually push this through, or whether it'll be seen as people recognize that it's for good reason, like because of our health, but also they're saying, come on, this is nanny statism. So let's watch this.
You can regulate everything, but don't regulate the smokers, I guess, is what they're saying. So thank you for joining us today as we connect the dots in the food chain with Dr. Food. I just wanted to call out that we have our Transparency Summit taking place in Chicago, October 22nd through 24th. If you go to our website, foodintegrity.org, in the dark blue bar at the top, the first link is to the Transparency Summit, where we'll have all sorts of interesting speakers, breakout sessions, workshops to help you understand how to become more transparent as an organization and build trust in the food system as a whole. So that's just another example of some of the things that CFI is bringing. Thank you, David, for being our emerging trends from around the world expert. And we look forward to seeing you all back on October 3rd, blink of an eye, where we can join together one more time. So everyone have a wonderful day, and I hope your September is beautiful. Thanks.
Yeah, see you in October. I'll be in Australia then, and so it'll be late for me and early morning for you.
We'll figure it out as we always do. Thanks, David. Take care, everybody.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.